Hi everyone, Susie here from Minnesota, and I garden in a zone 4 and it's March 17th, and I'm going to be sowing some seeds with you today. I'm going to be going over the supplies that I will be using, along with some tips that I've picked up over the years of seed sowing. It hasn't been long, it's been a few years, but I've learned a lot along the way. I had a lot of time on my hands last year, which has just got me completely addicted to starting seeds. I love it, and it's just, I can't urge you enough to just maybe start a couple seeds. You'll appreciate it. So the supplies that I'm going to be using, I'm going to start over here first and work my way this way, is definitely the seeds that you're going to be sowing. I'm not doing all of these. This is what I have, along with how you're going to label your plants. This is just painter's tape, along with a Sharpie here. I have vermiculite, along with this is just a recycled bottle with a bottle top water, which you can get at Amazon. I have some sandpaper. I have a jar here that I have some seed soaking. I use these little seed trays to start the majority of my seeds. I love this way. Most of the seeds that I'm working with are so tiny that, you know, you just scatter. They do end up clumping, but I find it wastes less soil, and I can fit more in a small space because I can fit 3 of these trays in this big tray here, which has no drainage holes, which I bottom water at the start. And I have a humidity dome, which helps aid in germination. It keeps the moisture in, which is what your seeds need. And then over the years, I used to just use a seed starting mix. My big box stores carry Jiffy, and which is amazing. The only thing is I have a lot of seeds I'm going to be sowing, and a little bag like this does not go a long way. So I ended up going to using a potting mix with no fertilizer, which can be tricky, but I prefer using a potting mix with no fertilizer because I have found in the past that if there is fertilizer in it, your seeds get really leggy. So it's just, I prefer controlling the fertilizer that goes into the soil of my seeds, my plants. And let's see, what else do I have here? Grow lights, lots of grow lights. And I have a short growing season, Minnesota, so I like to get a head start on the growing season. So my plant room is in my garage, which I keep at 65 degrees. So seeds, most of them germinate between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And some need a little more warmth, which is where heat mats come into play. I do have heat mats, I just don't use them a lot, just on certain seeds. I also find that if you do use heat mats and you leave your seeds on there once they've germinated and not turn off that heat, you're gonna get leggy seedlings too. They just keep stretching. That's why I'm kind of iffy about seed mats. But because I can control the temp in my plant room, it's 65 right now. I need to run a dehumidifier just because the humidity in here is unbelievable. It was 90% this morning when I came out. So the one thing about running a dehumidifier is that I found that the temp in here is at least 10 degrees. It's making it 10 degrees warmer. So it was quite warm. But I've been having mold issues, and my plants haven't been drying out as fast, which also isn't the best. Algae has been forming on the top. One nice thing about the dehumidifier is I can use the water to water my plants. So there is that. So when that's going, I've turned the heat down in here. So that's all of the supplies that I'm using there. So the seeds, I like to stagger the times too, as far when I start them. So I'm not sowing everything at once, and all seeds have different germination rates and when they should be started. Some grow a little bit slower, some grow really fast. I strongly urge you to keep a journal, just because I did last year, and it's helped me immensely because there were some seeds I was going to start, and when I looked through, I saw when I started them and I'm like, they grow really fast. The one thing that you find out with keeping a journal is what grows slow, and certain ones that don't like their roots disturbed, that they throw an absolute fit with being pricked out. So I do them a little bit differently. And it's just, like I said, I like to get a head start, but I definitely don't I try not to have my plants blooming before getting them planted out. I just find if they're blooming when you plant them out, they struggle. They're root bound, they go into shock, and they take a long time to pull through. So I just learned not to start seeds too soon. I've kind of learned my lesson there this year with perennials, but that was a little new for me. So like I said, I'm still learning a lot too. If I forget anything or if there's something I haven't covered, please leave it in the comments below. I will answer all your comments. I always forget something, so I'm very sorry about that. But I order mainly, most of my flower seeds, I order from Select Seeds. I order a lot online. There's so many more varieties than just going to your big box stores. But Select Seeds, I think, is probably the most fantastic one for the information you need to start your seeds indoors or outdoors if you are lucky enough to direct sow. I wish I could. I would definitely not be having an issue with the room because I'm running out of room. But on the front side or the back side, everything you need to know as far as what temp they germinate at how long they germinate, what's required, just amazing. So you don't have to go online and figure out all of this. They also send the seed sowing guide. So when I first started out with seed sowing, this helped me so much. It's just there's things in here as far as it's why I use vermiculite. Also why I'm using sandpaper for some. It's you need to nick the outside of your seed to help germination because some of them have a really hard coating. And cold stratification, which is your seeds need to be put through a cold spell. Not all, but some. Still learning about that. But yeah, pretty much everything you need to know is in this. So I always refer to this if I struggle. The other thing I do with my seeds is I do put up here in the corner anything I need to know about the seeds. If I need to nick them or like scarify, if I need to soak them, which I did fail, I'll show you. When I want to start them, I have an 8 up here, which is 8 weeks before my last frost date, mid-May. And like I said, I kind of stagger the plantings just because I don't want everything happening at one time. Yeah. And so I kind of failed over here because I wanted to plant the Blushing Susie Black-Eyed Susan vine today, but I didn't soak the seeds 12 hours prior to sowing. So I'm going to need to wait with that one. So there is a lot to know about seed sowing, but again, don't stress it, just have fun. That's the biggest thing I can say to take away from this. Just have fun, don't overthink it. And so I'm going to bring you in closer and we're going to start sowing some seeds. Okay, so the first seed that I'm going to be sowing is called Hibiscus Mahogany Splendor. And again, the directions on here are amazing. If you can see that, it's a little blurry. So this is one where it says to scarify by chipping or filing seed and then soak in warm water for about an hour prior to sowing, which I have, but I'm just gonna kind of show you. And I've done this before on canna seeds that I have saved just because it's a really hard outer coat. They're just so much bigger to work with. So this is a teeny, can you see that little black speck? Yeah, not too bad as far as seeds are concerned, but you could use a tweezers. I've tried, and every time I've tried to scrape it, it's popped out. So I've used my fingers. It's just, I've kind of got a little sandpaper burn on them. So I'm just gonna go, if you can hear it, back and forth a little bit. Ow. And I mean, I can't really see, normally when I did the canna seeds, I can see where I've done it, but I'm just kind of going with my gut feeling that I've done it enough and hope for the best. This is the first year that I'm going to be doing this seed, so I can't wait. I didn't realize I ordered this at 2 different places. So like I said, I love Select Seeds. I can't say enough. I'm not sponsored by anyone. I have really good luck with that company, but this is what it will look like. So I love foliage. I'm addicted to foliage. So yeah. And I will also be sowing these seeds because I'll wait a little bit to see how this works out, because this says that it takes sprout time 7 to 21 days. It does say to sow indoors 8 weeks before the last frost date, which again in my area is the middle of May. I think a lot of people, at least northern, is middle of May. So yes, at this point, I'm just gonna set this little guy aside. I think I've scarified it or nicked it enough. Ow, that really still burns. I'm just gonna, you know, I'll sow him, you know, we'll see what happens. Sometimes I soak seeds and sometimes I don't. I've just find that I haven't seen a huge difference in it. They say you need to do that with sweet peas, but I haven't done that with sweet peas and I still have had excellent germination. So I've already had these soak in here. I'm just gonna drain them real quick. And I made sure to label, I just label it hibiscus. I know what it is. I have my seed packets. And when I started at 317. And, oh, I should go over to, let me just drain this first. Sometimes I can't do 2 things at once. You know, I'm just gonna do this. Be careful so I don't make a mess, because I definitely don't want my seed packets getting wet. That would not be good. All right. I hate working with wet seeds too, because they just stick. I'm just gonna set this here. So when I sow my seeds, I pre-moisten all of my potting mixes before sowing seeds. And what I do is I boil water, and once it's done, when it's boiling, I pour it into a plastic bin with a cover. And not to where it's really spongy, but just so it's soaked enough so it's a little easier to work with. So when you go to water, it doesn't all bubble up. The reason why I boil water is because it kills off anything that's in your potting mixes. Most of your potting mixes that you buy should be a sterilized potting mix, but still anything can, you know, come through that. I find that once I pour the boiling water in, mix it up, and then I cover it and let it sit for about 30 minutes to an hour. Be careful when handling it because it's still pretty hot, but I just find that it works out a little bit better as far as like bug control, things that kind of hitch a ride. So that's what I do. I know you can put your potting mixes in like a Ziploc bag and put it into microwave, or not, maybe not a Ziploc. I think I've used, you know, what you use for turkeys and hams. I forget what they're called. I'm drawing a blank. I don't do a lot of cooking, so I'm sorry. It's so messy and it takes a lot. So I've just gone with the boiling water method. So a little side note. I've looked that way. I still have fungus gnats, but you know what? I haven't had anything else. Knock on wood. Okay, so getting back to the seed sowing. So I've drained here. I'm just going to put it in this cover here. Can you see me? So when I sow my seeds, I just want to make sure that they're spaced out at a good distance. I like to give them the most optimal conditions for growing and the most room that they can grow. This also kind of prevents leggy seedlings for stretching to reach the light and competing with others. Come on. So these are the ones that I have scarified, soaked for an hour, and thinking happy thoughts. And this little guy here, I just scarified him. He did not get soaked, so he's just going to go in. So I'm just going to start placing them on the soil here. Or I should say potting mix. There's no soil in potting mixes. It's just pretty much like perlite, cocoa coir, peat, maybe some bark, but not a whole lot of nutrients, which is good for seed starting because the seed has everything it needs in the seed. Oh, I'm stuck to my finger. This might get a little lengthy, so hopefully either you're seed sowing with me or grab a beverage and sit back and relax. It's nice and quiet so far. The one thing that I can say about seed sowing that I've learned to relax when doing it, because it can be kind of stressful when you first start out because there's a lot to know, and like I said, leggy seedlings are probably what you really don't want, but you know what? It still works out. Again, the biggest thing I can say is just have fun with this. the best thing is when you start your seeds and then you see them come to fruition. It's really amazing that you put in all of that work and you take all that credit for it. I'm just going to use the last of them. Okay, so that's all of those. So I'm just going to lightly press down just to make sure there's good contact with the soil, or the potting mix, I should say. I keep saying soil, but potting mix, or a seed starting mix if you're using it. You don't want to like really pack it down, but just enough to make sure that there's also no air pockets. All right, I'm just gonna get, there we go. I got a squeaky chair. All right, so on here it says, just cover. This is what I use for everything when I'm covering. I really like the vermiculite. The vermiculite helps hold in the moisture. And it's a light growing medium. So far I've had really good results with it. You can get a nice size, when I say nice size, a decent size bag, and a little goes a long way. I'm still using vermiculite from last year. And I know on some seed packets it says just cover or surface sow. And even if it just says like surface sow, this is still what I go with. Some seeds may say 1/4 of an inch, an 1/8 of an inch, a 1/16 of an inch. Don't stress out about that. Just plant it. Seeds are, they want to grow. The bigger the seed, a lot of times it's kind of like double that depth is what I'll go. But for the most part, you're going to be working with small seeds. So I would say no more than 1/4 of an inch. So now I'm just going to lightly water just so I don't disperse any of the seeds. I love this. I just want to make sure that this is all moistened, because this is what your seeds need to germinate. All right, so this one is ready to put into my tray over here. And because the soil is pre-moistened, of course, I've made a mess here. I just, like I said, make sure my seed packets don't go in it. The next one I'm gonna be sowing is, let's see, a Lumia Vanilla Cream Marigold. I have to read my writing. Okay, now I need to find that one in here. So that's this one. Again, I have an 8 up there because that's how many weeks prior to planting out. And it says press into soil, lightly cover, and its germination is at 70-75 degrees Fahrenheit. The one thing I will say is when you do start your seeds indoors, you do need to put them through a hardening off process. It's where you are acclimating them to the outside conditions, because when they're growing inside, they are being babied. And a lot of times when I have growing seeds indoors, I have fans going just to mimic that air movement outside that they would get. It creates nice strong plants. So there is 50 seeds in here. I'm just gonna sow the entire packet. Oops. And they look a little weird. Just here, maybe. They're flat. So I do my best just to kind of evenly place them. You know, I think I'm gonna do half a packet, because I might do another tray. I think 50 seeds in here will be too much. When it comes time to prick them out, it might be a pain. And these I can control where they go, because they are big enough and I can see them. Because some seeds are so tiny where, it's kind of like dealing with pepper. Yeah, I hate the hardening off process. I'm not gonna lie, it's just, I find it, the thing is if I didn't have a job, it wouldn't be so bad because I could do it daily and I can watch the weather, but because I work closing shifts, it's I kind of do it when I can do it. Last year, like I said, I had the time and it worked out great, but this year there's really no one in my family that help out with this. They don't like gardening. I'm the only one, really. My dad taught me everything I need to, not everything, but he got me hooked on gardening. More vegetables. Okay, so that looks like a good amount, and it says press into soil and just lightly cover. Again, I'm gonna go with the vermiculite. You can also at this point use some of your potting mix, but I really like using the vermiculite. Again, I don't have a ruler out. I'm not measuring. When I first started seeds, it was, I kind of got that personality where it has to be perfect, and then you just kind of let loose and just enjoy. I love seed sowing. I usually put my music on and do this. Lightly water. And that one is done there. Okay, so the next one I'm gonna sow, actually I have two. So sometimes I only have a tiny amount of seeds in a packet, and what I'll do is I will kind of divide them. Just kind of put, this is just a plastic plant label. And so I'll do one over here and another one here. That way I can utilize my space really good. And then I have them labeled that way too. I just need to make sure I put the correct ones on where they're labeled. So the first one on the my left-hand side, let me just put this away. So let's see here. Vanilla Improved Hybrid Marigold. So a lot of varieties that I've picked and I'm seed sowing might be common varieties as far as marigolds and zinnias and you know, morning glories, things like that. But I love the common varieties. I'm kind of a common girl, so I just think, I don't know, kind of old-fashioned that way. There's only 15 seeds in here, so I will be doing all of these. So this is where you think happy thoughts that all of them germinate. The other thing I can say about, depending on what you have plans for your seeds, if you're just planting them in a garden and just for color, but if you actually have plans for them, say in containers, a certain amount and combinations, always kind of have a backup plan, because things don't ever go according to plan. There was one seed that I started where I'm like, I need to have 12 of that, and it didn't happen. I only got 4. So I had to refigure out how I'm gonna do pots, like a different combination, which is not a bad thing because it just changes things up. So things don't always go according to plan. It's kind of what I like about gardening is, you know, you try and control it, but yet Mother Nature has a different different way of saying it. All right, there's that one. And then the next one I'm going to be doing is, this is new for me, is Pink Shimmer Kufia. There's only 10 seeds in here. It says multi-pelleted seeds. I don't know what it means by that, but when it's pelleted, it means that they were probably pretty tiny to begin with, and they always, oh weird. So they'll look like, come in this little tube, which makes it easier to work with. And so they kind of look like that. And this one says, this says do not cover, but I'm still gonna put a light coating of vermiculite on it. Be careful so you don't squish them. I've done that before when I've done coleus seeds. Yeah, I've squished them, and that pretty much is it for the coleus. Oh, I hope this works out. I wish I had pictures on the seed packets, but you're just gonna have to stay tuned, and hopefully these work for me, because I want to see what they look like too. All right, so I'm just gonna lightly press, making sure seeds are not sticking to my hands here. Okay, there's that, and then I'm just gonna cover it with a light coating of vermiculite. There's a slight hum in here, and that's my fridge kicking on and off. All right. Oh, one more step. I missed it. Lightly water. So let me know what varieties of seeds you're starting down below, or if you've started some of the seeds that I am, and if there's any tips that you can give me. I had a viewer in another one of my videos that said, I'm trying lavender, and so far I think I've had one come up. And I said to try stratification, so I'm definitely going to be doing that. I also I've done out some winter sowing too. It's still too early for results, but I'll see how that works out. I might do lavender that way too. So I love the fact that you have lots of tips for me also. Gardening is always a learning experience. This next one, let me turn it, is I grew this one last year. This is Globe Amaranth, Keys Carmine. A lot of these flowers that I'm growing are for cut flowers, but this was wonderful. This was a slow grower. I would say when I planted it out too, it looked pretty weak. I did not have high hopes for it, and it was absolutely unbelievable. I don't have many seeds left in this. This is probably where I should have done, how do I want to do that? Might change it up. I think I'm gonna, this is kind of wet. If it sticks. I'm gonna do the Globe Amaranth there. So the one thing about the Globe Amaranth, it says is that it needs darkness to germinate. I'm not sure how I feel about darkness. I'm just gonna cover it with vermiculite. And I think it'll be fine, because last year I found a lot of times when it requires darkness, you put black paper over it or cardboard, or I would use another seed tray, flip it on top. But I found that when I removed the cover, I had better germination. So I think as long as I'm using something to cover it, like vermiculite, I might be okay. And then I think what I'm gonna do here, bear with me one moment. Again, I know this video could be getting a little bit long, but if you know me, I kind of have long videos. So lots of labels here. Shove that baby down there, and which one did I have? All right, I have some more of those marigolds. I'm just gonna label this real quick. I'm just gonna go a Lumia. Like I said, whenever I'm starting seeds, I try and cram in as much as I can to save on space in other places. So I'm just gonna put the label on that side. All right, so this first side here, we're gonna go with the Globe Amaranth. They're weird looking seeds. Really weird. And because they're from last year, I might not have great germination, but we'll see. They're kind of fuzzy. Uh-oh. Space them apart. Oh, come on. A lot of the seeds that I have, I just keep from year to year, and I have pretty good success with germination on them. All right, so there's that one, which is the Globe Amaranth, and then I'm going to sow the last of these marigolds. Oh, come on. Again, they're weird. When I first started seed sowing and I saw seeds like this, I was like, am I supposed to just shove them down in there? But I lay them on the surface and go with it. All right, so I'm gonna press lightly. Keep saying the same thing over and over, but that way I'm not forgetting anything. I'll probably put a little heavier coating of vermiculite with the Globe Amaranth just because it says it does need darkness, so that might be good enough. Well, you and I will both find out too if this works. I just find when I cover it with like cardboard or black plastic or a black sheet, like paper, or like the seed tray, what happens is if you don't get that cover off soon enough, when it starts to germinate, they get really leggy. They look horrible, to tell you the truth. So I just find they look a lot better whenever you don't have that on them. Let me know what you think, what your thoughts are on that. All right, so that is it for the seeds that I'm going to be sowing today. And I will show you where I'm going to be putting them, so stay tuned. Okay, so this is where I put the seeds that I just sowed. They have their humidity domes on. And right now I have the lights on just because I have some things growing over here. Otherwise, I would say when you first sow your seeds, you would not need your lights on. Just make sure you're checking on them regularly, because once they do germinate, you're gonna wanna turn those lights on as soon as possible. That prevents legginess, but most seeds don't germinate till about 3-4 days, depending. If you do have them on a heat mat, check on them regularly because the heat mat does speed up germination. So yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this seed sowing video, and bye for now.